that the minister is making those type of statements in the public domain. And the government and by extension the Port Authority do not want to address the real issues that would have precipitated and caused this to mushroom into where we are in terms of the impasse. And let me give a background. The Seamen and Waterfront Workers Trade Union entered into a discussion with the Port Authority, the Minister at the then time and Minister Cadiz, and we were talking about the efficiency and productivity of the port, and we were talking about ensuring that we have a competitive edge before we are competing.
Comrade,
Yeah.
1 second. Let me call you back. The connection is a bit bad. Give me at least less than a minute. Master Control, take a very short break. We're going to change this. We're going to come right back. Hold on there, comrade.
Quality and affordable hardware supplies. No one beats Midland Hardware. Located number 97 Eastern Main Road, Arouca. Midland stocks the #1 brands in hand tools, garden tools, water tanks, power washers, generators, water pumps, kitchen and bathroom faucets, along with face basins and toilet sets, blocks, lumber, steel, sand, gravel and topsoil. Also check out Midland for steel windows and assorted designs of metal curtain rods. Everything for home and business projects. Payments via links, credit cards, online payments or cash on delivery. WhatsApp 327-7761 or call 646-2144. Open every day.
Thank you so much, and we do apologize for that. Okay, comrade, go right ahead. We have the President General of SWWTU, Michael Anisette, and of course, we're in the midst of explaining how all of this came about, what's happening now as far as those folks who have downed their tools at the port. Go right ahead.
Yeah, so that as I was saying, that we had these discussions, and I consider it to be meaningful in that we were able to drill down on some fundamental issues that was required to make the port competitive, efficient, and productive. One of the fundamental concessions we would have made was the question of working 5 and 7, because that was a global phenomenon. And we discussed the question of gang sizes and other operational necessities to make the port efficient. And coming out of that discussion, we would have agreed with a 12% wage increase. And that agreement, which was a memorandum of understanding, was signed off by the Port Authority management and the executive of the Seamen and Waterfront Workers Trade Union. But more importantly, the Port Authority hired an industrial relation consultant to guide the process and represent their interests around the negotiation table. Okay, that was in August 2015. The elections was called, and after we were advised that the new government doesn't want to honor that agreement because they say the process was flawed. Having said that, we would have made representation, and when I said we, meaning the National Trade Union Center, because I'm the General Secretary of the National Trade Union Center, to discuss with the Minister of Finance, Minister Imbert, about the outstanding negotiations that public sector workers were experiencing. And mind you, we are talking about in 2015 now, and in 2024, and we still have outstanding negotiations that are existing. And the issue of the port was raised, and the minister would have articulated to me that, Mr. Anisette, look, I don't want to discuss this within a NATUC framework, but I want to discuss that outside of a NATUC framework. And I did make some proposals And he asked me if the proposal I was making was for the trade union movement. I said, no, I'm speaking on behalf of Cement and Waterfront Workers Trade Union. Before that meeting, we would have asked for the implementation of the 12% to cut down the exacerbation that will arise each day if we do not implement the 12% and the cost it will derive in the context of back pay.
All right, let me ask you this, President General.
Yeah.
Because I know the people who are weighing in on this right now are saying that now prior to this election, of course, in 2015, a lot would have been said. A lot would have been of music to your ears, and of that, of course, of your executive promises would have been made. Are you saying, of course, that whatever was said, this administration did not keep their end of the bargain?
What I am saying is that the agreement was negotiated under the UNC regime.
Right.
And when this government came into power, they failed to recognize and honor a legitimate agreement that was acquiesced between the Port Authority and the Cement and Waterfront Workers Trade Union.
Were there any correspondence with this administration coming in? Or basically you expected that since this was inked and everything was sealed, that they would have lived up to whatever it is the arrangements were?
But that is standard industrial relation practice. That is standard even in the context of government-to-government arrangements.
And that's the reason why I asked you,
of business ethics and principles.
And that's the reason why I asked you that, President General, because it has come to our attention, and we've had the PSA here on the Observer, we've had many of the other unions, and the consensus is that this administration is not union friendly. As a matter of fact, the unions are viewed more of a liability than an asset, which is there to represent the interests of the workers. Have you seen this playing out yourself over these past years?
Yeah, obviously. There cannot be no doubt that the People National Movement administration under Dr. Keith Rowley would have done everything to undermine and isolate the trade union movement. I will give you just one simple example. Coming out of going back to Eric Williams days, the issue of trade union representatives on state boards and statutory board was something that was implemented. And it was a policy that was carried through by every government, including the coalition, including under ANR, including under Chambers, including under Manning. And when this regime came into power, they made it clear that they are not going to honor the placement of workers' representative or worker voice on these boards other than the boards where it was legally required for the trade union to have a voice. That is a fact. They cannot deny it, but more importantly, the issue of not giving directives to the state enterprises and statutory bodies to start negotiations over a period of 10, 12, 14 years in some instances, clearly demonstrates an insensitivity and a lack of appreciation that workers are the driving force of any economy. And when you take away their purchasing powers and the ability to buy goods and service, you are in effect interfering with the economic growth of any economy. But more importantly, when you marginalize the middle class, like this government would have done, you are setting up your economy and your country for all kinds of fallouts that arise from that kind of policy decision. And one of that is crime. Crime didn't happen just so. No one is born a criminal. There are some underlying factors that is responsible for the spate of crime as we see it in Trinidad and Tobago. And therefore, we need to speak truth to power And we need to start to drill down on these issues, because the issue of not paying government employees proper decent living wages, where the government is the biggest employer in Trinidad and Tobago, is a prescription for an economic nightmare, and is a prescription for pushing Trinidad and Tobago over the economic cliff. That's a reality. That's an economic reality. Because economics is not about if you sell petrol train or you sell the port, Economics is about people. Economics is about people stand up and living, and the right to have sustainable jobs and living wages. That is what economic is all about.
I agree with you, President General. I agree with you. Again, it goes back to my saying that you agreed with, that this administration looks at the union more of a liability and not that of an asset.
Not the union, the working class, the poor, the disadvantaged community, the pensioners. Right? Those are the people that attention, the single mothers, the pensioners. Look, I have a paper here. A police officer had to go on protest and say he going in a fast because his benefits have not been paid to him, and he retired from the police force. This is madness. Why must a worker have to do that? Do we see that with government pensioners? Do we see that? No. I want to say government pensioner. I mean the pension for the Prime Minister and other people in the hierarchy of the economic ladder in Trinidad and Tobago. And if we don't want to talk about it, we're going to regret as a country that we fail to raise these issues so that we could bring out the real potential of Trinidad and Tobago. And it must not be just a few benefiting who have finances and are friends of the government. It must not be. It cannot be.
Explain to us, one of the issues here is that although negotiations and conversation has been going on to try to achieve a fair and collaborative resolution, this issue with the Port Authority, the board has chosen to implement a disclosure form for employees to sign prior to receiving their promotion notices. Is this common industrial practice?
No. This has never been practiced in the Port Authority in Trinidad and Tobago. It has never been practiced. But that is not the issue. No. The issue is that in light of the impasse on all what is going on, the management choose on their own, and as we say, unilaterally, without consulting the recognized majority union, which is a requirement in law, because what they propose to do is a change of terms and conditions of employment, and it's only the two parties can agree with that. And I want the public to understand that. And what this management choose to do is to tell workers that you have until the 1st of November to sign these forms, and if you do not sign the forms, we will withdraw your promotion. What madness is that? What confusion and disaffection and anger that you want to cause among the workforce? And you must expect the kind of reaction that we are seeing now from the workers. I'm a worker. I was a port employee, and I know how long it takes for I to get promoted. I was promoted after assistant shed manager, and I never had to sign a disclosure form. And then if that is what you want to do, and then what is the disclosure form? To tell me that I'm not working here, I'm not working there, and I'm not employed there. No. What type of madness is that? What kind of infantile disorder is that? Right, and then it have other issues that I can make reference to where the management unilaterally went about and implement decisions. Like if the port, it has been willed to the management by their parents, and we the workers and the union have no say or no right to stand up for our rights.
Let me ask you something as well, President General, because there have been reports that trainees who are now coming into the system are being paid more than workers who have been there for years.
No. It's not trainees in the Port of Port-of-Spain. It is trainees at Point Lisas. Point Lisas, as you may recall, was set up in the 1980s, thereabout. All right? And when I was the president of Cement and Waterfront Workers here, brother, trade union, when I took over, the workers were getting in Point Lisas lower rates than that of Port of Port-of-Spain. But the Port of Port-of-Spain and the Port of Point Lisas is a port, and we do the same jobs. And I would have argued why it is that a ship-to-shore gantry operator in the Port of Port-of-Spain must get more money than the ship-to-shore gantry operator in Point Lisas. When they are doing the same job, they are driving the same equipment, and the job is of equal value. And then, therefore, there must be a level of equity in the salaries. Having said that, we were able to negotiate over an extended period of time to bring those workers, all right, on par with the counterparts in Port-of-Spain. But what has happened? Point Lisas have had about three years going into 4 years, which is 12 years collective agreements, when the Port of Port-of-Spain, the government never directed the management to meet and treat with the union over those 12-year period. So that quite obviously, the rates of salaries in Point Lisas has gone past astronomically above the rates of that of Port-of-Spain workers. And the Port of Port-of-Spain, as you know and the public know, have been in existence years before Point Lisas. How do I... Right, okay. That's it. Yeah. How can I, as the president of Cement and Waterfront Workers Trade Union, and the workers in Point Lisas and Port-of-Spain, am I going to sit down and accept that a trainee in Point Lisas, who is now training to operate a ship-to-shore gantry crane, which is the highest rate, right, in the port and globally, is getting more money than a Port-of-Spain employee who have been working on that piece of equipment for as much as 15 to 20 years. Is that fair? Is that equity? Does that make common sense? And those are the issues we have been pointing out to the government and the Minister of Finance, and they're not paying attention. So then you have a dissatisfied workforce who comes out there under all kinds of conditions that is not suitable an environment for work, which is a health hazard. They are getting less pay, and they are required to work much more and harder than the counterparts in Point Lisas, whose salaries are much more than the dock workers in Port-of-Spain. That is a reality.
Yes, now all that you have said there has brought us up to date on everything. I mean, again, this is not something that has just taken place overnight. These workers have really and truly been treated in a manner that has not been seen before as far as industrial relations. But now you have the chambers weighing in. You have DOMA, of course, saying that over almost 700 containers have been affected by the actions of these workers. The country's exports are in trouble. You have other people weighing in and saying, not at this time, it is Christmas, it is not the season. Things that are needed, especially for businesses, they can find themselves being crippled by what is taking place. How do you then explain to them, listen, that's not where the focus is, but the focus is on the rights of these workers?
Right, let me put it how I would normally put it. We have what you call a working class group of people. And you have an elitist class, a business class, all right, and an elitist politicians. And what history has taught me is that they sing for their own supper and they think about themselves. And the question of profits and their business trumps anything. But this issue that we are talking about is the economic issue that has implications for Trinidad and Tobago. Where is the DOMA insisting that the government do the right thing on the Port Authority? They haven't said anything because this issue did not happen yesterday. They were quite aware of some of these burning issues. Where was DOMA? Where was the chambers? And then we are not going to accept that. And let me make it clear to the public here. Dock workers are prepared to stand up for our rights. And we know freedom only comes from struggle. And we will struggle. They could do what they want to do. They could squeeze us out. They could try to run the union. They could try to sell the port, a major asset for any economy. Because the 5 major ports in the world, they are owned by the government. And why we cannot do it? Why you run down the port deliberately so that you could sell to your friends and partners and say you're doing a PP relationship? Like if that is the answer, when the history is something different. And I understand that, and I'm telling the DOMA president, come and talk to Siemens Union. Come and understand what are the real issues. Because you don't sell cloth. And if anybody come to you and they don't work with the money for the price of your goods, you're not going to sell them. You are not. And if you don't have workers to buy your cloth for Christmas, or we don't have the money, your business is going to bust, like what we are seeing in several malls, what we are seeing with small business and small enterprises, because we do not have the wherewithal to sustain them. We have the issue with the Forex, right? What is causing that? How can I go to Guyana, Antigua, Jamaica, Grenada, and get US just like that, and I can't get it in Trinidad and Tobago? Something is fundamentally wrong with the system, and we must look at all these things. And I'm telling the business community, this is not about you only. This issue is a fundamental issue of fundamental human rights, and it borders on arrogance and dictatorship, a creeping dictatorship that we must not allow to happen, because we have said in the union that we are willing to work with all stakeholders, including the business, for a better port. We would have demonstrated that by signing that agreement. What more do you want from us? When we had COVID-19, the dock workers was the first line of defense, because every cargo that came into Trinidad and Tobago, the dock workers who had to handle it and discharged. We had dock workers who paid the supreme price. We didn't cover it. And now, for our rights, for decent wages, for our rights to be paid the wages that we sat down with the Port Authority and agreed with, that the Port Authority signed. I don't want to know that the CPO didn't instruct them. That is not my business. My business is that in the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, the recognized majority union is Siemens Union, and the employer, according to the law, is the Port Authority. The employer is not the government, and then therefore the government must not interfere with the due process of collective bargaining by making decisions that they would have taken in cabinet to depress wages for government employees. That is what is happening, because the NIB workers, where the board and management agreed a 9% wage increase, and the industrial court registered that agreement, the Minister of Finance challenged that, and up to now the NIB workers haven't been paid the 9%. And the question you have to ask, if the industrial court is a superior court of records, how come that the Minister of Finance can interfere with the process in the manner in which he has done? Those are fundamental questions. Why don't the business community in talk about that? But more importantly, within the same period from 2012 right up to the present, the very private sector would have given wage increases to the workers every 3 years. They cannot deny it. And the average for the 3-year period is 8 percentage points. They cannot deny it. Why it is that this government wants to play that they are the baddest thing, they are tin gods, and whatever we say goes. How do you justify to a port worker that you want to offer him now 0.02% for the period where you get a 12%? Meaning then that workers where you have 0.0 would not get pension increases in an escalating cost of living scenario where we have no control over. Those are the facts. Nobody can deny it. And I'm breaking down economics simple for the people to understand.
Now, President General, it seems as though the tone, when you look at what is being said by administration, the Minister, Sinanan, the line minister, he says that he understands that the port management is making every effort to ensure that essential cargo arrives and is cleared promptly to minimize the impact. And now you have, of course, he's saying that if it's a matter of wage issues, it has to be discussed at the level of the CPO. Is the administration disconnected? I mean,
the minister that do not make statements, right, to Siemens Union, that is not law and is not a legal requirement. The question of the CPO does not rise. The CPO is not our employer. The CPO is a secretariat for the government team. All right? We negotiate in law with the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. And then all I'm simply saying, if the Port Authority sat down and negotiated acquiesced to the agreement and sign it off, if you believe that they had no authority to do that, do you punish the workers? It comes like if a bandit commits an act and you want to punish the family who had no dealings with the act that was committed. That is how we do industrial relation. Tell the minister with the greatest of respect, we are not going to fall for that kind of trapping. We do not negotiate with the CPO. The government, the rated workers, and the PSA, the police service, the army, and amalgamated workers who represent the rated workers. All right, those are the groups of people who negotiate with the CPO, not the Cement and Waterfront Workers Trade Union.
Right.
I did not sit down around the table with the CPO. We do not sit down around the table, and we have no intention of doing that. If the Port Authority, as you are claiming, which I disagree with, right, and then as I speak to you, do you know that the port management haven't gotten a wage increase since 2012?
Wow.
Is the public aware of that? What kind of insanity and insensitivity is that? And don't forget that at a joint select committee, the Honorable Prime Minister made a statement that on the port is the worst operated. We had indemnities and all these kinds of statements. You understand? But up to now, nobody could point their fingers to port workers and the port management and say that we are dishonest people and we are involved in corruption at the highest level that we would have heard from other state enterprises. But more importantly, is the public aware that the Port Authority pay their wages from the monies that they own? They don't have to go to the government.
And President General, well said, and I'm certain that you've cleared the air on a lot of things. So when we hear these chambers, we need to let them know that they need to get the full story, exactly what is going on.
No, they need to meet with the union.
Yeah.
Rather than I'm going and panter to your own interest and your self-interest, which is what is destroying our society. Because it's about I. It is not about we.
All right.
The workers are part of this society, and they have a right to be able to share in the resources of Trinidad and Tobago. And I'm not going to buy into the narrative that the government can only afford to pay 4% over 6 years. They cannot fool me with that kind of economic analysis. That is a government policy that is rooted in IMF policies, and the government is using IMF policies to depress the wages of government employees. Because if your economy, just let me finish that.
Go ahead, President. We got to wrap up. We'll go ahead quickly.
All right, but if your economy is doing bad as you claim, how come the private sector who operates within the same economy can pay an average of wage increase over 3-year periods, consecutive 3-year periods of 8 percentage points?
Yeah. That brings us to the end of our interview. I want to thank you so much, President General, for weighing in on this, taking time out, and we will be looking at it and, of course, checking in with you periodically to get this full story. Thank you once again.
Okay, yeah. I appreciate the opportunity.
Take a short break. We come back. We speak to former Finance Minister Vasant Bharat right here on The Observer. We'll be right back.
For all top quality and affordable hardware supplies, no one beats Mitlin Hardware. Located number 97 Eastern Main Road, Aruca. Mitlin stocks the #1 brands in hand tools, garden tools, water tanks, power washers, generators, water pumps, kitchen and bathroom faucets, along with face basins and toilet sets, blocks, lumber, steel, sand, gravel and topsoil. Also check out Mitlin for steel windows and assorted designs of metal curtain rods. Everything for home and business projects. Payments via links, credit cards, online payments, or cash on delivery. WhatsApp 327-7761 or call 646-2144. Open every day from 8 a.m. From foundation to finish, it's all at Mitlin.
Thank you so much, Master Control, and we are back. And joining us for the first time right here on The Observer, let me say a pleasant good evening to former Finance Minister Vasant Bharat right here on The Observer. Pleasant good evening to you.
Hi, Mikey, and good evening to all of your viewers and guests.
Thank you. Election day in the U.S., the polls close. Well, it's going to be 8 o'clock our time here on the East Coast. And of course, on the West Coast, it will continue. We close. Of course, it has been made clear to us that the results, we can't expect the results, of course, on tonight, as the case may be.
No.
Sometime later on. But let me ask you, what are we looking at here? I mean, when you look at the issues, of course, and you mentioned we look at the economy, democracy, abortion, women's rights, education, all of these issues, and especially immigration. What are we looking at here at this particular time in the U.S. society?
Well, you're looking at two policy positions from the Republicans and the Democrats that are almost diametrically opposed to each other in terms of philosophy. So I tend to be a little bit selfish. I look at it from the Caribbean's perspective and Trinidad and Tobago's perspective in particular, because we're so closely tied to the U.S. as they say, you know, when the U.S. sneezes, we get a cold in Trinidad and Tobago, because so much of our existing quality of life essentially is dependent on the U.S. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure if many people know, but we actually export about 40% of our exports go to the U.S., as well as 40% of our imports come from the U.S. So we are very heavily dependent on the U.S. for trade. So therefore, the outcome of an election in the U.S. in the United States of America is always very important to us and our future. So there's several areas, for example, that we need to consider very strongly in the next weeks going forward, and they predominantly revolve around the issues of trade, as I just mentioned, but also, of course, security, energy, and then this thing called climate change that Mr. Trump seems to believe doesn't exist at all. So, with regard to the security issues, currently Trinidad and Tobago, in fact the Caribbean, has a cooperation initiative in place with the United States. It's called the Caribbean Basin Security Initiative. It's called the CBSI. Right. And what that does, it's an initiative which allows the U.S. to fund several programs and collaborate with us in areas of drug trafficking, arms smuggling, violent crime, trafficking in human trafficking, and so on. So that currently exists. So what I'm going to just briefly talk to you about are the things that currently exist that may be under threat, and they currently exist through the Biden-Harris arrangement, right? So that administration, and there's every likelihood that all of these arrangements that we have existing will continue, or they may be expanded under a Harris administration going forward. And the opposite is likely to be the case if there's a Trump administration. Of course, in addition, there is an arrangement, it's called the, if I remember correctly, the U.S. Caribbean Partnership on Climate Crisis.
Yeah.
And that actually, again, is something, of course, is ongoing between the Caribbean and the U.S. And we know the effects of climate change. We've seen it in Trinidad and Tobago on many of our coasts. We're seeing it with the weather patterns and so on. We know that Mr. Trump is on record as saying that climate change is a hoax, and I think he's also on record as saying it's one of the greatest scams of all time. So we know what his record on that is, or what his levels of commitment on climate change is going to be. So this particular initiative between the United States and the Caribbean obviously could be in jeopardy if Mr. Trump is elected. The third issue, and the one that is most critical to Trinidad and Tobago, certainly in the immediate future, is this whole issue of energy. As you know, Mikey K, the government of Trinidad and Tobago has pinned almost all of our economic hopes on gas from Venezuela.
Which is the Dragon Gas Field Agreement.
The Dragon Gas in 2027, right? Now, currently, under a license that has been granted by the Biden administration, we've been able to enter into arrangements to get gas with a Shell pipeline coming into Trinidad and Tobago, presumably in 2027, as we've been told. We also know that former President Trump's America First, almost isolationist position and policies and his position on Venezuela in particular, could very well mean that if he wins, that entire arrangement between Trinidad and Tobago and all of our hopes with Venezuela just goes up in smoke. So essentially, we have no gas in 2027. If Trump wins, and if he engages in, or he carries out a lot of the threats that he's talking about with regard to Venezuela. So, those are some, obviously there are issues with regard to diplomatic ties. Kamala Harris, because of her Caribbean roots,
right,
are more likely to be committed to U.S. CARICOM relationships, more so than President Trump. So I think President Trump is very clear in his priorities. It's domestic over international alliances, and he's more likely to not bother too much about current arrangements that could potentially affect us in the Caribbean, and play up to the voters at home with his America First policy. So I really, honestly believe that based on the policy positions of both former President Trump and Vice President Harris. It would be in the Caribbean's favor for Kamala Harris to become president of the United States.
This administration has somewhat dropped the ball when it comes to geopolitical issues, handling of geopolitical issues. Do you believe then that if there seems to be too much of a chumming up to Mr. Maduro, President Maduro, that we can face some sort of geopolitical backlash?
Well, of course. I mean, remember that there has been existing tensions, even with the Biden administration, there has been existing tensions with President Maduro, not just with the United States, but predominantly with the rest of the world, because the rest of the world see him as a dictator and see that and believe that there has not been free and fair elections taking place in Venezuela, and also that he has reneged on a lot of the promises that he's made with regard to free and fair elections and the outcome. And the fact that we have put all of our eggs in the Venezuelan basket leaves us in a very dangerous and precarious position should the tables turn and we are no longer able to get gas from them, because we have not put anything else in place to replace Venezuelan gas or to replace the depletion of our existing wells in Trinidad and Tobago. And it was a statement I made recently with regard to the lack of foreign exchange we have in the country. Our lack of foreign exchange in Trinidad and Tobago, just to pivot a little bit, is based purely on the very poor economic policies that have been implemented by this government over the last 9 years. And predominantly they revolved around taxing the population, borrowing more money, taking money out of the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, and selling of state assets. They've done nothing to generate productive investment and economic activity, creating jobs, firing up the private sector. They've done nothing. So we are now facing a very dark tunnel down the road, not knowing if what we're putting all of our eggs basket, we're putting all of our eggs in down the road in 2027,
right,
is going to bear any fruit at all.
Does government then need to take a step back and make this assessment? Do you believe that this is going through the psyche of the administration, that we need to take a look at this, make some serious assessments, and see what we need to do as far as moving things forward?
Mikey, I don't think that there's anyone in this current government who actually knows what to do from here on. I think they've basically given up. They've had 9 years at the wheel. They've crashed the car completely. I don't believe that they can come out of the wreckage, and I don't think they know what to do to come out of it. So I think they're just winding down for the next few months until a general election is called. And they, look, if Ministerial today was on, I think he gave a press conference.
Yes,
I didn't hear all of it, talking about reallocation of foreign exchange. And so the reality in Trinidad and Tobago is that we have a severe shortage. Demand outstrips supply. And the law of economics is if you don't create supply, you're always going to be in a position where demand will outstrip it. And we have not created any new forms of revenue in Trinidad and Tobago in the last 9 years. So we export. Just backtrack a little bit here. Our forms of revenue coming into the country is maybe three or fourfold. The major one is from the oil and gas companies through our exports, and we export maybe about 85% is made up of from our energy sector. We get remittances, of course, from the diaspora, and we get some foreign direct investment, not very much in the last 9 years.
Looking at what the finance minister said a few days back, when he issued a three-page statement asserting that food importers cannot hold the public to ransom by increasing prices. particularly when they knew that accessing foreign exchange from the Exim Bank was a temporary measure to prevent shortages during the COVID-19 pandemic. But how much activity was taking place in the heights of the pandemic that there needed such to be protection of U.S. currency?
But where else would the wholesalers have gone to get foreign exchange? The reason that they were knocking on the Exim Bank's doors is because the banks blanked them for foreign exchange. The banks didn't have. So where would they have gone? They couldn't have gone. They couldn't have turned anywhere else other than the black market. So if you have to go to the black market because there's no foreign exchange available at the banks, and the Exim Bank cannot give you any more because the minister has ensured that that Exim Bank cannot give money to wholesalers, foreign exchange to wholesalers. The only place for them to get it is on the black market. But in addition to the fact that they have to purchase on the black market, and I'm sure Michael Anderson might have mentioned it today as well, in addition to that, there are going to be increased costs involved in doing business in Trinidad and Tobago because it is very difficult and very bureaucratic to do business in Trinidad and Tobago. And when vessels come to Trinidad and Tobago and they're stuck on the port and they're stuck in customs and they're stuck because Bureau of Standards didn't go and inspect them on time, and all sorts of bureaucracy, all of those things add additional costs to doing business in Trinidad and Tobago. And all of those things, it's a circle. So what then happens is that people who are looking at Trinidad and Tobago as a potential investment destination say, no, we're not putting any money in Trinidad and Tobago. And that's the reason why we've had no FDIs in Trinidad in the last 9 years. It's the reason why local investors, Mikey K, are either keeping their money in the bank or they're investing outside Trinidad. So you look at Associated Brands, you look at Bermudez, you look at SM Jalil, they're no longer investing in Trinidad and Tobago, They're investing in countries outside of Trinidad and Tobago, and they're earning their foreign exchange outside of Trinidad and Tobago, and they're leaving their foreign exchange outside of Trinidad and Tobago, and they're employing foreign nationals in the meantime. So what we are experiencing in Trinidad and Tobago is a downward spiral in economic activity, and the government just does not know what is required to be able to resuscitate.
The thing about it is that you're echoing the same sentiments that I've had many people on this show discuss, economists and what have you, and mind you, we love our country. I'm sure you would agree that we're not here to sell doom and gloom, but this is the reality that we face. Then the big question is, if we are going nowhere, and this is the financial stagnation that we found ourselves into, consumer confidence is at an all-time low, how long can this administration hold it together?
Well, as I said, I think they're in wind-down mode. I think they just don't know what to do. They are waiting for an election. And I mean, and really that's the release. The election, when the election is called, is the release for them and for the opportunity for the country to actually what we are
sell doom and gloom, but this is the reality that we face. Then the big question is, if we are going nowhere and this good evening and welcome. That's right, it's another episode of The Observer right here on Guile TV and of course on Amplier Flow Tigo and on RealMediaTT.com. Got to check us out. This evening we're speaking to President General of the SWWTU, Michael Anisette, and also former Finance Minister Vasant Bharat right here on The Observer. And don't forget, our bodies are under stress, from environmental toxins to work stress to poor food choices and low nutrients in the food we eat. Our bodies are under a lot of stress. All of these can lead to high inflammation levels. Excessive inflammation can lead to a large number of health problems that cause pain and damage to the body. Omega-3 fatty acids help the body reduce inflammation. Omega XL provides the health benefits of many fatty acids, including omega-3s, for the reduction of inflammation in the body. It is one of the most powerful, all-natural, anti-inflammatory supplements on the market today, so pick up your bottle of Omega XL. We'll be right back after these messages.
XL brand delivers quality service.
I would recommend Omega XL to everyone.
Take care of yourself, take care of your health with Omega XL.
If Omega XL works for me, it will work for you.
Over a period of time, I started feeling stronger in my knees where I could add more pressure.
When you say TNT's construction boss, then there's only one company, Lacroix Construction Services Limited, specializing in general construction, industrial maintenance, manpower resources, transportation and lifting, and equipment rental, excavators, bulldozers, dump trucks, lighting systems, and everything for your project. We have affordable prices. Call now 267-0000 or 431-0012. Lacroix Construction Services Limited, TNT's construction boss.
Oh gosh, this place hot. And the AC in this car not working.
Check Ryan Air. Ryan Air is ranked among the best in TNT for auto air conditioning service. They specialize in repairing and servicing all makes and models of vehicles and heavy equipment. They also stock a wide range of parts. Give them a call at 640-5828 or visit them at number 41 Kane Farm Road, Tacarigua, or email ryanairac@gmail.com. For prompt and efficient service, look no further than Ryan Air.
Limiting chronic inflammation is important for so many conditions that occur.
I had a lot of pain 4 years ago.
I used to have pain in my knees, in my hip.
Taking it for arthritis.
Omega XL saved my life.
Then I started to realize, but hey, I can use my hands, I don't have any pain.
All in all, I am pleased to say that the Omega XL has worked.
Thank you so much, Master.